Stephanie Anderson, the Everyday Learners Director for United Way of Utah County. I hope this works today, so if you can't hear me or it's not working well, send us a message and that message will get to us right away. So we're waiting to make sure that everything's working. I want to begin today by thanking all of you for participating in these classes. It's been so successful, and some of you have asked in some of the comments, will we continue this when we start to meet face to face? And yes, we will. We have found that we are able to reach people that only have one car, that live too far away from any of our sites, that live out of state. And so yes, we will continue these. Now, when will these continue? I'm not quite sure. We do know that we use interns to help us with our Ready to Learn classes, and unfortunately, we are not going to have interns during this summer. So we are trying to decide when we can come back together and how we're going to come back together. But at this point, we're moving forward through May with the online Ready to Learn classes on a weekly basis. And so we are excited that you are here. I'm glad that this has been helpful to you and that you've been able to get some ideas. I've loved reading your comments and sharing some of your experiences, and also hearing about some of your books when we do the live book reading on Thursdays. I've actually bought a few new books from my library and really enjoyed them. The Night Parade has become a favorite at our house. So thank you. Another thing that another group of people that I want to thank are my employees. I have 2 employees that are still running Welcome Baby. One of them's in Boise and one of them is here in Springville. And they are not coming into the office but doing so much behind the scenes. And if it wasn't for them and the rest of the United Way staff and team, we would not be able to have this. And especially those that fund this program and has continued to fund it as we come live. I'd also want to give a shout out to my family that lives with me. They actually are the ones that are filming this, helping me get it posted, making sure that the envelopes are right and getting the books in the envelopes. And so it's been a joint effort. And so I'm glad that we can serve you. And so one of the things that I want to mention today is today around the world is called Giving Tuesday, and United Way of Utah County is participating in that. And we are trying to raise $25,000 today for the COVID-19 fund. And these funds will go for food and housing, other needs that we're hearing about. We're finding about what is most needful, and then we're trying to fill those gaps to help people. So Emily is going to post on our Welcome Baby Facebook the link that you can go to. If you are able to, I know not everyone is, but if you can just give a few dollars, it will really help to raise the $25,000 that will stay in Utah County and help the families that need it. And if you're one of those families that need it, please call 211 and get connected to the resources that you need. They will help you find the resources and the places that you can go to get the help you need. So today we're going to talk about storytelling, and the title of this class is called Storytelling, You Can Do It. And I wanted to start out by giving you sort of a brief history of how this workshop came to be. I was very fortunate to meet a lady. Her name was Stephanie Roth, and she actually wrote 3 of our workshops for us. She's very educated, has a really great sense of child development, and she is a great mother. But what she does professionally is storytelling. And so she helped write and create this workshop. And she used to teach this one exclusively. I never taught it. I taught the ones that I wrote, like nursery rhymes and some of the others that I wrote. But I didn't teach this. Stephanie's life became too busy and she was no longer able to teach for us. And so I had to start teaching this class. And I'd seen Stephanie present it so many times. And so when I first started presenting it myself, I tried to do everything like Stephanie did because she's a professional and I wanted to make sure that you had the same advice that she was giving people. I learned very quickly that I could not be Stephanie Roth. I'm Stephanie Anderson, and so I'm going to tell stories the way that comes naturally and with some practice for me and for who I'm presenting it to. So the one thing that I want you to remember is you can do it means that you can take the tools that we're going to give you and some of the suggestions, and you can practice, because storytelling does take a little bit more practice than just reading a book. But you can become a successful storyteller. And so I hope that you learn from my mistakes is taking what comes naturally, taking what you can work on a little bit to be a better storyteller, but don't try to be somebody you're not. Make sure that storytelling fits who you are and your personality comes out with it. So another thing that I want to share is I remember teaching one of these sessions at a high school to a child development class. And we were talking about the importance of storytelling. And I walked into the classroom, and it must have served as a history room too, because there was a great big poster and it said, "History is just somebody's story." Isn't that interesting? And we do know that storytelling, as we talked about in our nursery rhyme class, oral history really was important when we didn't have all the electronics. And storytelling was something that was just handed down from one generation to another. And you might think of people that used to tell you stories. Now, I'm going to start out with a story today, and we're going to use one of the tools that we talk about. But before I tell you the story, I'm going to tell you that we are going to actually take some polls. We're going to try my polls again. It wasn't very successful last week, but hopefully it will. So in your description of today's workshop, there is the texting way that you can do the polls or through your computer. So you just need to go on one of those and download or go to that app or whatever you need to do, whatever it's called, sorry, and get there so when we start taking the polls, it will come up. Last week after the class was done, everybody's polls were up, and I was the only one that got to see all of your suggestions. Now, there is only room for 25 responses, so if it doesn't accept your responses, because 25 people have responded already. So anyway, I'm going to tell a story. Now, one of the most important tools or techniques that you can use as a storyteller is imagination. Now, imagination works both ways, not only with the person that is telling the story, but the person that's receiving the story is going to use their imagination and come up with the characters. And the whole storyline is going to be a mental image that they create. So the story I'm going to tell you today is actually a book from Audrey Wood, and it's called Silly Sally. Now, Silly Sally walks upside down. I cannot, so I'll just pretend to. But I want you to imagine what Silly Sally looks like. What would Silly Sally look like if she was walking upside down? Would she be prim or proper? Would she be kind of whimsical? Her hair flying everywhere? I want you to imagine what she looks like and the rest of the characters that I talk about. Now, you're going to notice that if you receive this book, and one of the activities that we are going to give you are something from Audrey Wood's website, and it's the handouts from this book. And you can use the pictures to create your own book, or have your children put the story order in, or make up your own story with it. But I can't always remember everything. In fact, I'm always seeming to tell my grandkids and my kids is by the wrong name. So I sort of set this story to a song. It's not a song, but it just helps me remember it. And just remember, as I've told you before, I'm not that great of a singer, but this just helps me. So, Silly Sally by Audrey Wood. Silly Sally went to town, walking backwards upside down. On the way she met a pig. Silly pig, they danced the jig. Silly Sally went to town, dancing backwards upside down. On the way they met a dog. Silly dog, they played leapfrog. Silly Sally went to town, leaping backwards upside down. On the way they met a loon. silly loon, they sang a tune. Silly Sally went to town, singing backwards, upside down. On the way they met a sheep. Silly sheep, they fell asleep. Oh no, how is Silly Sally going to get to town sleeping backwards, upside down? Well, along came Nettie Buttercup, that tickled the pig that danced the jig, that tickled the dog that played leapfrog, that tickled the loon that sang a tune, that tickled the sheep who woke right up. And that's how Silly Sally got to town, walking backwards, upside down. Now that is a fun song, a story, and you can use it a lot of different ways, and I'm going to talk to you about it in a couple minutes about storytelling and how it is so important to literacy. But the first thing I want you to think about, and you can put this in your comment bar if you want, but you don't have to, is what did your Silly Sally look like? Before, when I read this book, it reminded me of Pippi Longstocking, and this is Silly Sally. She's quite the girl. She's got a lot of petticoats. Her hair is all messy. Let's see some of the other characters. There's the dog and the pig and the loon. And here's the sheep. He's a sly little feather. And here comes Nettie Buttercup. He tickles everyone, and off they go to town. So I hope you enjoyed that story. I am going to, this is where you're going to sign up for the polls. So if you haven't already, this is where you need to go. And I hope you've done it because it does take a minute to load up. So we're going to do our first poll. And like I said, it accepts 25 answers. And so if your poll isn't accepted for some reason, that might be why. And I know we'll come back to it also to see some of your answers because it does take a second for them to load. So we're going to go to our first poll. And I want you, I have to get to all these screens. I want you to tell me why you think storytelling is different from reading a story. What would some of the differences be for storytelling? So we'll see if any responses come up, and it might take a minute to load. If not, I'll go around and I'll talk to you about why we know that storytelling is different. One of the things that I know about myself and my storytelling is that my children love Miss Mary Mack. Yeah, that's a good one to act out. Storytelling is more, it's not coming up. Let's see if I can get it to go down. We'll see what that comes up in a minute. Okay, interactive. Yeah, and you're right. Reading can be rote and you can just do it. Have you ever read a book just to get through it at night so your kids can go to sleep? It involves more. Yep, it does. So these are good answers. Dramatic interpretation. It's more interactive. Okay, good. So those are the reasons why. And I don't have a great imagination. I could not make up a story like my dad used to tell us stories, never had a book. But he would tell us stories and his grandkids' stories and now his great-grandkids. And it was interesting because I can't do that. I can sort of take a story and change it a little bit, but I don't have a great imagination. And so using a book for me is a good way to start another story. So you can do that. So as you think about storytelling, we know that there's 5 different tools that make a good storyteller. And as you read a book, you can incorporate the storytelling tools or techniques and make reading a book become more alive. And so we're going to talk about those. We're first going to talk about why storytelling is beneficial. And in fact, there's been some articles written that talk about that storytelling is actually better for younger children than just reading a book. And I'm sure when I tell you some of the reasons you have experienced these, is that a lot of times with children, they're so worried about looking at the pictures in a book that they're not concentrating on you telling the story. I know in our play groups when we're showing a book, they want to see the picture. And so if you have a lot of children, it makes it difficult for them to concentrate. Another reason why storytelling is better is because it leads to children using their imagination. One of the things that we learn in our child development class is children with a healthy imagination are good problem solvers as adults. So storytelling can really make a child to have that imagination and to think about things. And you could ask them questions while you start making up a story, or what would happen if the three bears didn't leave and Goldilocks came home. You can make your own fractured fairy tales up with that. So you can use different methods of that. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint because I want to tell you I'm told by everyone that when I turn around you can't hear me when I'm talking, so I'll try not to do that. But the research gave some reasons why storytelling is very beneficial, and I want to just go over a few of them, and I want to incorporate the story that I just told, the Silly Sally story, so you can understand it a little bit better. So that storytelling is a springboard to reading, and that means that it helps get a jump start on reading and literacy. So one of the things with Silly Sally, in the activity that we're going to send you, it's got the pictures of some of the characters. And one of the things that we've talked about is story comprehension. And so a child can take the pictures and you can say what comes next. Now, the way that I used this book in my home was we used it as a rhyming game. So rhyming, as I've mentioned in other workshops, is a learned literacy behavior. It does not come naturally, but it's very important for children in reading. So as your kindergartner and first grader, they're going to practice a lot of rhyming, and being able to hear different sounds and different endings is important. And so with this book, you could go, Silly Joe went to town, walking backwards upside down. On the way he saw and then your child Joe could see something, a car, silly car, it drove real far. Now, when your child starts to do something like this, what they're going to do is they're going to do cause and effect. And so they'll say, they saw a car and it was red. And that's great thinking. That's cause and effect, and we want to see that. And you don't need to focus on the rhyming until a child gets familiar with this, but as they learn that, then the rhyme will be, Silly Joe went to town, walking backwards upside down. On the way he saw a car, and it had a great big scar. He might do something that doesn't make really sense. It doesn't have that cause and effect, but we're practicing rhyming. So that's okay. It isn't until they're more advanced that they can do the cause and effect and the rhyming together. And so doing these kind of things while you're in the car, and that's one another benefit of storytelling, is you don't really need anything. You can just do it wherever you're at, whether you're on a walk or in a car. And you can say silly instead of silly, you can say kind. You can use those adjectives as for children, and then they can do it. So it becomes a springboard to learning the cause and the effect. You can use it for story comprehension, what comes next, and you can use it for rhyming and understanding what rhyming is. Now, as I've talked about Audrey Wood, one of the things that she does in a lot of her books is what comes next, and she's going to do a lot of those sequencing activities, and storytelling is a sequencing. So as you can see, you're going to have all the characters right in the book. So first comes the pig, and you see it right there. It's the closest one. And then after they do a little jig, then you've got a little picture of the dog, and the loon is upside down. Got the dog there. And then there's the loon's head. Then see, the sheep is over there with his head covered. And now you're going to be able to see that. And all the while, Nettie Buttercup is right there. So you've got a story sequence right there. And that's very important in storytelling, is that story sequence, making it mean something. And so as you do that, that's a springboard for reading. What comes next? And so isn't it interesting how much comes from just a simple story in literacy type activities? Very, very easy. Another one that I think is one of the most important things of storytelling is it solves problems in a safe environment. Now, my grandma was great at this. I always wondered when my cousins were there if she changed the story a little bit, because she'd always tell me stories about my dad and what a great helper he was. And she usually told me those stories when she had asked me to do something and I wasn't quite getting there. And so she reminded me of that without having to sort of nag me or get on my back. She used a story and how grateful she was for her children that could come in and see something that needed to be done and do it without being asked. So I remember those stories, and I remember her using those. And so this does not just end with little children. We use stories our whole lives to help solve problems. And like I said in the beginning, history is somebody's story. We use past history to help us make decisions for a better future. And so I think it's great that as we become adults that we read more. As I was getting my degree, I was an older adult, and I was introduced to literature that really helped me understand things that I never knew existed, or helped me understand a culture or what happened to a culture because of things that happened to them. And it gave me a sense of who I wanted to be. So storytelling can solve problems in a safe environment. I know at my house, I'm very, very fortunate that I'm quarantined with my son and his family and wife. And sometimes we have some grumpy pants in our house. And it's interesting that instead of always saying something that I'll say to my one grandson, "Are you grumpy pants?" And then we talk about the grumpy pants. So finding stories such as Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, you can talk about what happened in that story and then talk to your children about, have you ever had a horrible day? Has it been sort of scary? So taking books and finding things that help children understand their own life. Now, one of the things that we talked about in our shared reading class is making your own stories of your children. If you want them to do something, to write a story about them cleaning their room. One of the best ways that children can be resilient, and this came from university from, I'm trying to think what university, so I better not say because I might have it wrong, that storytelling helps children become more resilient. And you know the stories that they need to hear are family stories. So telling your family stories about what happened to you or your grandmother or your ancestors is very important. We have a handout that is about storytelling and about things about your family that you can answer. So if you'd like that, make a comment and I'll get it to Emily and she can send it to you. And Emily probably just said, yeah, one more thing I need to do. Sorry, Emily. But so tell your own stories. Tell your own children about when you were so embarrassed, or about when you first fell in love, or how you met their dad. So tell them about the day they were born after you read Chrysanthemum. And so how they got their names. Those are things that help children solve problems and become more resilient. I just love that. Another thing that storytelling does is language development, because I know in my house right now, a book I'm going to read to you is called Yo Yes. And I have a 2-year-old granddaughter that loves that book. In fact, she's worn our copy out. I need to get her another one. And she doesn't she speaks quite a bit. Not everything we can understand, but we can hear her say, yo, yes. And so stories do. As somebody said in one of the poll results, is that they can clap along or be involved. So storytelling does that. It develops muscle coordination, just back to that poll of Miss Mary Mack. You're clapping, you're moving. A lot of stories, you do move in them. And especially those simple ones that we're just starting out, like Skiddle-Marinky Dinky Doo. So those are things that you can do that will do that. The most important one is bonding, as we've talked about in other things. When children feel safe, they can move forward. It's so important. That's the foundation of all of our development, is feeling safe and feeling wanted and needed. And so stories can do that. So that's why it is good to, I like with my grandkids when I get to see them, is to tell stories about their parents when I knew that, when they were little, or when I first met their mother, because I have 3 sons and 1 daughter. So things like that. So those are things that you can bond with your children. And I'm grateful that I grew up in a home where we had a lot of storytelling. One of the things I do want to say, and I know this is true in my house, are men are better storytellers than women. I should have asked this question of why, and I didn't, so I'm sorry. But we do know that, and maybe some of the comments would be, is men are not as afraid of making a fool of themselves. Maybe they take the time to not read a book, but just tell a story. So this is one activity that dads sort of beat us. And I know with my husband, he was not afraid to make a fool of himself or use a washcloth in a store to make a puppet while his wife was shopping, and he was trying to entertain our children. Using props. My husband's great at voice, so he could change his voice a lot. And so he didn't really read my kids a lot of books, but he did do the dramatic play and tell them stories a lot more than I did. So men are better storytellers, just so you know. So as we talk about stories and how you can read books, my next question in the poll is, what books are good to use for storytelling? So I'm going to bring that poll up, and I wrote more than one question this week. I just want to see if we got some more results. The voice, we're going to talk about voice. Thank you. Okay, so our next poll is, not that one. What are great stories to use? And we've already got a response. So they said books with animals. We're going on a leaf hunt. So yeah, the effects. So things that you can actually do. I know that with my children, we always did, we're going on a bear hunt, and it was fun to see them really get involved in that. So just keep putting these in, and I'm going to come back to these, because I want to know what books you read so I can read them too. So we're going to talk about the 5 tools of storytelling. We've already talked a little bit about imagination. Imagination, like I said, I'm not great that I could make up a whole story, but I could take a book and change it a little bit and come up with different things. So can your children. Another activity that you can do is just take some string, cut some pieces, different lengths, start a story, and as you're telling the story, you wrap it around your finger. Then when you're out of that string, then the next person has to continue the story, and just add and add and add to that story. Let children practice that. But using your imagination is one of the tools that works both ways, as are some of the other ones. And then the next one that we're going to go to is, oh, here's a great quote. I have such great employees that have updated my PowerPoints, and this is a great quote. Logic will get you from A to Z. Imagination will get you anywhere. That's by Albert Einstein. Isn't that great? Isn't that a fun picture? That's a good story to tell. So imagination, we're going to show a clip. Super White does this a lot in all of their episodes, is they take a story and sometimes there's a problem, and so they have to solve it a little bit different. So you can either mute me and pull this up yourself or watch it with us.
The magic beans grew into a big beanstalk. At the top of the beanstalk, there was a giant making a lot of noise. The giant sounds so loud, just like Joy. And that's super why we are in this book. Both Joy and the giant are really loud. We need to find that giant and see how Jack gets him to stop making all that noise. Look! Jack is climbing up the beanstalk. We need to climb up the beanstalk too. Let's climb. Like this. Climb. 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 Ow! With all that shaking, we can't get up the beanstalk. What are we going to do? Alpha Pig to the rescue! With my amazing alphabet tools, I can build alphabet stairs to climb up this beanstalk. Say the letters with me. A, B, C, D. What letter's next? E. Yes, E. F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M. What letter comes after M? N. Yes, it's N. O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y.
So they had to use their imagination to get up that the beanstalk. I wonder what happened. I wonder how they made that baby stop crying. Sure, a lot of you would like to watch the rest of that episode. So you can take an episode like that and see and ask a child what you could do next. You could take a book and say, what do you think could happen? So as you use your imagination, there's lots of books that will give you that, those things that you can do. So, the next one is one that I do not have a talent for, and that's voice. So voice is where you can change your voice to different accents or different dialects or all kinds of things like this. This is where my husband and my daughter does really well. Their mother does not. In fact, when I was taking one of my children's literature classes, we were assigned to actually make a puppet, come up with our own story, and then use the puppet to tell a story, and we had to come up with a different voice to practice our voice. And I remember telling my professor, I do not do that well. I think you don't want that. And she's like, well, then you better practice a lot and do it, because that's part of the assignment. Well, I did really good on my puppet, did really good on my story, and my voice failed miserably. In fact, she said, yeah, that did not go well. So I actually went to a storytelling class at the Timpanogos Storytelling Festival, which you can take classes there. And so I took one on voice and wanting to know what I could do. And the one thing that the instructor talked about is for people like me, although I can't use my voice to make a different accent, I can use my voice to do high, low, fast, slow. So when I was doing Silly Sally and the sheep fell asleep, my voice can go low. But your voice can tell a lot about the story. Now, if we were here as a group, what I would do is say the word like oh, and then I would give you different scenarios to say the word oh. Like with your teenage child, is your room clean? After you'd been in there 2 seconds, oh. Or the day that you got your tax refund, oh. Or the night that everybody got the stomach flu, oh. So using your voice can make, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it will make the whole difference. And so as you're reading stories, you can use your voice to that high, low, fast, slow. And every book is going to have some place where you can do that. One of my favorite authors is Robert Munsch. He is the famous author of I Love You Forever, I Love You for Always, As Long as I'm Living, My Baby'll Be. I remember in 1985 when I got that book and read it and cried. At that time I had 2 little boys, and it's become one of my favorite books. And so I loved Robert Munsch. And so when I saw another book of Robert Munsch, I bought it, and it was nothing like I Love You Forever. In fact, Robert Munsch really exaggerates things, and he'll go, when he was a professional storyteller, what he would do is when he would go to someone's town to present for them, he would stay with the host family instead of staying in a fancy hotel, and then he would write a story about where he'd been. Isn't that fun? Now, not all of his books are like that, but a lot of his books are. And he says that he has to tell a story at least 100 times before he can write it. And so he has a lot of great books. I would suggest to you that have Libby or the library access on your phone to list him. We've been able to read some of his old classics. Now he's from Canada, and so he uses a lot of what he knows in his stories. And the reason that I talk about him for voice is that his books are pretty silly and exaggerated, so you need to use your voice to make sure that the story is fun. So he's got a lot of hints for you to use your voice in a different way. But his books are great to be able to use your voice, to do that high, low, and never, said Tina. Uh-oh, said Tina's mother. She decided to never take off her socks. So using your voice is going to be a lot of fun. So as you think of a couple books that come to my mind for using your voice and making it a really great book is No David. I mean, there's very few words in that book, but how you say no can make all the difference. Like when the water's coming out of the bathtub all over, it's no, 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 no. And then, no, David, or stop that right this instant when he's picking his nose. So you can use your voice that high, low, fast, slow. So as you start reading books, think of that until it comes natural. My husband the other night when I was reading out loud to my grandkids, he's like, have you always read like that? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, with those different voices. And I don't know, I don't think I have. I think I've just had a lot of practice. So that's what it does take, is a lot of practice. So the next thing we're going to talk about is expression. Now, moms have this great mean mom look that just comes right when we first have kids. We just get it. But expression is right here. So it is the face up. So your face gives your expression and tells people how you feel. And so if looks could kill, that's one of those things. I am not able to have this amazing, another Audrey Wood book. This is another one of hers, and once again, the illustrator is her husband, Don Wood. But in the Little Mouse, the Red Ripe Strawberry, and the Big Hungry Bear, the whole book is about a little mouse that never says a thing. But his expression tells you how he's feeling. So when he's trying to hide from the big bear that wants his strawberry, or about, hello, little mouse, what are you doing? It's like, who are you? It's the narrator that tells the story, but it's the expression of the mouse that really tells the story. And so being able to read a book and point that out, as your kids are looking at books, or as you're telling a story, show me how they must feel. Show me with your face. How would you feel sad or happy? And giving that to the children so that they can start using their expression, and then they can read yours too. There are children that maybe be on the autism spectrum, that reading those social cues is very difficult. And so stories are a really good way for you to point out, look at, he's feeling this way. He's feeling this way. Oh, now he feels happy. And so being able to point those out and then have them do that. Don't get some early intervention if you notice that your child's on that spectrum, because they can help them with that and help them express feelings. That's very difficult for children some children on the spectrum. So as we move forward, gestures is my thing. If you haven't noticed, if you have never seen me face to face, or you just watched these online, I'm always moving my hands. Back in the day when we had landlines and I'd be talking on the phone, my hands would be going all the time. I have someone that I work with at UVU that's one of my supervisors for some classes I teach there, and she said, her son said, if you didn't have your arms to talk, you couldn't do it. And that's how I am. Gestures are very important for me. I like to move, and so Silly Sally is easy for me, so I can do that leapfrog or do the jig. Even though I can't sing well, I can add those things to it as I go. And so gestures are how we feel. Now there is a clip that we're going to show from the show Between the Lions. This was a PBS show. Great episodes has a lot of literacy, things that you can find on YouTube. But they had one character that was a reoccurring, it was Chicken Jane. And Chicken Jane could only balk, and so she couldn't talk. But it was her gestures that really made the difference. So watch Chicken Jane help Dot and Scott.
And now, fun with Chicken Jane. Today, Chicken Jane and the bees.
I love those clips. If any of you learn to read with Dick and Jane, that's sort of a spoof on them. The Dot and Scott, and Chicken Jane is always the one that even though she can only balk, she's the one that's using her body language. Now children, they actually will look at body language more than they do words. So most children, and so body language is something that is fun. What would a grumpy old man look like? Or what would a princess look like? So you can have your children, while you're telling a story, have gestures or their body language looks like that. Now the book that I'm going to read is the one that I told you that is worn out in my house. It's called Yo Yes, and I'm going to move up front after I talk a little bit about it. It is a book that the gestures really do tell the stories. There's only a couple words. There's not very much verbiage in here, but the gestures of the two boys make the whole story. And it's fun, and it's really good to talk to children about. Have you ever felt this way? What have you done? So this book is called Yo Yes by Chris Rakshakan, and I hope I said that name right. He has other really good social and emotional books, so check him out. Yo Yes for my parents. What does he look like? How is he feeling? Yeah. Yes. Hey. Who? You. Me? Yes, you. Oh. What's up? Not much. Why? No fun. Oh? No friends. Oh, yes. Look. Me. You? Yes, me. You? Well. Yes. Yo, yes. Yo. I'm sure that we've all felt like this before, and so have our kids. But that's how we look, isn't it? As I work with people, I have to say I watch a lot of people's body language, and sometimes I misinterpret it. But it is interesting to watch kids, and that they really do, their expression and their body language tells you how they're feeling. So use that. Once again, talk about those type of activities with your children. Have you ever felt like this? How does that make you feel? What would have you done? So those are some really good ones. Llama Llama Red Pajama. You should be getting your books in the next day. I got a lot of copies of that, so those of you that did the Ready to Learn class, all of you will get your own Llama Llama Red Pajama, and so much expression on the little llama's face, and how she feels, and what's going on. So the expression and gestures there of the mom running up the stairs is really fun to see how she's feeling without any words. The next thing or tool that is very important in a story is the text or the problem. So the problem, like in Silly Sally, how is she going to get to town walking backwards, upside down, asleep? Do any of you moms feel like that? That you just are walking, barely moving, trying to work and take care of the kids that can't go and play with their friends? Probably feel like Silly Sally a little bit. So anyway, but there's got to be a good problem to a story. And so there is a book that's called Abby Yo-Yo. I haven't been able to order it. It's not available on Scholastics. But the author talks about that he feels like bedtime stories are just propaganda to stay up one more time, one more book, or one more minute, or one for a little bit longer. But he talks a lot about stories. Click Clack Moo is by Dorian Corin, who used to be a school teacher. And the problem that occurred with Click Clack Moo started right at the start. Farmer Brown has a problem. His cows like to type. All day long they hear click, clack, moo, click, clack, moo, clickety, clack, moo. And so his problem starts at the very beginning, and you work towards how they're going to solve it. And so, but good books have a problem. The book that I want to share with you today, it's called Inch by Inch. And it's about a inchworm that has sort of a friend of a bird, but the bird wants to eat him. So let's see what happens. Inch by inch. One day, a hungry robin saw an inchworm, green as an emerald, sitting on a twig. He was about to gobble him up when, "Don't eat me. I'm an inchworm and I am useful. I measure things." "Is that so?" said the robin. "Then measure my tail." "That's easy," said the inchworm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. "Just think," said the robin, "my tail is 5 inches long." And with that, with the inchworm, he flew where other birds needed to be measured. The inchworm measured the neck of a flamingo. He measured the toucan's beak and the heron's leg, the tail of a pheasant, and the whole hummingbird. One morning, the nightingale met the inchworm. "Measure my song," said the nightingale. "But how can I do that?" said the inchworm. "I measure things, not songs." "Measure my song or I'll eat you for breakfast," said the nightingale. Then the inchworm had an idea. "I'll try," he said. "Go ahead and sing." The nightingale sang and the inchworm measured away and measured inch by inch until he inched out of sight. Doesn't even tell you how, but it shows you. Another book that's fun that has a great problem that's very different is called Moustache. How to keep that moustache that's unruly out of everything. So another fun book with a problem. You can use the voice, the gestures, and the expression and help children use their imagination for that. So I want you to think now. We're going to do one last poll. And I will read you a story while we get the answers. So our last one, we've got books with a map. Oh, Tiptoe Joe, and it's mapped to the front. There's the monster in your book. Yep. 3 little pigs, Goldilocks and 3 bears. Brown bear, what do you say? Yep. Enjoy. Oh, thank you. So I want to do one last poll, and it is, let's find it. Next one. What's your strength in storytelling? Now this is a multiple choice and it's going to come up as a bar. And so you're going to tell us your strength. Is it imagination? Is it voice? Is it gesture? Is it expression? And just mark one of those and then it will tell us what is your strength. So one of the things that, like I said, voice is not, and so I've had to work on that and practice a little bit more. So mine is gestures and expression, and so those have come really naturally to me. The others I've had to work on, and I've had to practice them. So I want to end by telling you that storytelling really does help children feel safe, and storytelling is very, very important. It's something that we should be using more, telling your own stories, but making sure children know that storytelling and creativity is really important. One of the things that I just got reminded, and I was going to do this after every clip and I forgot, so I'm glad that my daughter and Emily got my back covered. So this word today, I don't get to pick the words, but last week it was candlestick, and this week it was popcorn, and I've been craving popcorn. I always say my heaven will be books, popcorn, and diet soda. Now, all kinds of popcorn, not just buttered, but all kinds of popcorn. So popcorn is the key word. So I hope you've enjoyed today. Remember popcorn. Remember it's Giving Tuesday. Go online, and if you can donate, donate. But this book is called Frederick, and it's by the same author as Inch by Inch, Leo Ranoni. And he has such great illustrations. And when I got this book, I actually got it for our math workshop because it's about seasons and the sequence of seasons. But as I read it, I'm like, this is such a good book about storytelling because it talks about that there's 4 little field mice and 3 of them are gathering everything to get ready for winter. They need to make sure that they have someplace warm and they need to have a lot of food. But Frederick, who's the 4th little one, he collects stories in his mind. He sits on a rock while everyone is busy, and he collects the colors and what's in the environment with them. And so it's a little bit longer, so I'm not going to tell you that, but it is about Frederick. But I want to tell you the very end. So when they got very cold, and they ran out of their supplies, and their nuts were gone, and where they were living in the rock wasn't so comfortable anymore, they remembered Frederick's supplies. "What about your supplies, Frederick?" they asked. "Close your eyes," said Frederick, as he climbed onto a big stone. "Now I send you the rays of the sun. Do you feel their golden glow?" As Frederick spoke of the sun, the 4 little mice began to feel warmer. Was it Frederick's voice, or was it magic? "And the colors, Frederick?" they asked anxiously. "Close your eyes again," Frederick said. And when he told them of the blue periwinkles, and the red poppies, and the yellow wheat, and the green leaves, and the berry bush, they saw the colors as clearly as if it had been painted in their mind. "And the words, Frederick?" Frederick cleared his throat, waited a moment, and asked if from a stage he said, "Who scatters the snowflakes? Who melts the ice? Who spoils the weather? Who makes it nice? Who grows 4-leaf clovers in June? Who dims the daylight? Who lights the moon? 4 little field mice who live in the sky. 4 little field mice like you and I. One is a spring mouse who turns on the showers. Then comes summer who paints the flowers. The fall mouse is next with walnuts and wheat. And winter is last with little cold feet. Aren't we lucky the seasons are 4? Think of your year with 1 less or 1 more." When Frederick had finished, they all applauded. "But Frederick," they said, "you're a poet." So Frederick's supplies were just as important, and I feel that storytelling is, as we bond with children and help them. But we do know that storytelling is a great literacy activity too, not just for young children, but for older children. Tell your own stories. I hope you enjoyed the books that we're sending you. We have some really great books that you can practice your storytelling on. I do want to see, so voice and expression is the tie right there. So no one's imagination. We need some more great children's authors about moving, and so I hope that we do have a couple people with imagination. Thanks for joining us today. Remember, the word is popcorn. You have until Friday at 3 to fill in your Google form. On Thursday, we'll be back just to read some stories. I asked my staff about some ideas for our books, and one of them said, why don't we talk about patience? So we're going to talk about helping children be patient. Those are the books that we're going to talk about, and some activities that you can do to help encourage patience. I do want you to remember that if you have the ability to donate to our Giving Tuesday today, the link will be on our Welcome Baby page, and you can go there and give if you can. If you can't and you need help, then you call 211 and get the help you need. Again, thank you to United Way and PBS Utah for allowing me to come, and have a great day.